I'm Andreas Kapsalis, and our group is the Boys in the Dinghy, and this is our podcast for Mr. Giuliano's AP language class on Boys in the Boat.
I'm Liam Bourke.
I'm Romano.
And I'm Savoia. So just to start this off, I guess if we're going to talk about some of the major themes throughout the book, I think we all kind of agree that Joe being a real dynamic character in terms of how he interacts with the rest of the characters and kind of coming out of, you know, where he was at the beginning, where he was kind of not really into the whole group setting thing, and then became like really a functioning member of a larger group. I think, you know, it's really appropriate to start off with this one quote, which is on page 170 and 171. And it says, as Joe raised a hand to acknowledge the wave of applause rising to greet him, he found himself struggling desperately to keep back tears. He had never let himself dream of standing in a place like this, surrounded by people like these. It startled him, but at the same time it also filled him with gratitude. And as he stood at the front of the room that day, acknowledging the applause, he felt a sudden surge of something unfamiliar, a sense of pride that was deeper and more heartfelt than any he had ever felt before. So I feel like that's really like one of the major, you know, I think that sums up one of the major points throughout the book. And, you know, when we talk about the ways that you know, he grew as a character, and then we go into the whole thing about how rowing kind of serves as a metaphor for the teamwork that they have, I think that's a really important place to start off.
Yeah, and I think when you started from that point, that's sort of like the peak and the climax of where Joe really was in terms of his like personality and character. And I think like throughout the book, you see him develop from this isolated person who didn't feel like he belonged in this college because of his family background, being alone for a lot of his life, and then also because he wasn't financially wealthy like a lot of other people, and also a lot of people on the rowing team. So like that's really the peak of where he actually felt like he belonged. And I feel like this sense of belonging that was developed by Joe all started because of
George. He gave him like because in the book, all the coach Ulbrichtsen, he started to notice that Joe was just like a weak link in the team. So he told George, who was the boat builder from England, to talk to him. And I guess when he gave him that talk about like teamwork and how rowing is not just a sport like where you yourself have to like, you know, work. It's a sport where like, you know, the entire team has to work together. I feel like that's when Joe kind of started to realize like, you know, it's like, you know, now I belong somewhere. Like I need to be part of this team and, you know, be something with other people. So I guess that's...
Yeah, I have a quote that works with that. It's a bit long, so I apologize, but it's one of the fundamental challenges of rowing is that when any member of a crew goes into a slump, the entire crew goes with him. A baseball team or basketball team may very well triumph even if its star player is off his game. But the demands of rowing are such that every man or woman in a racing shell depends on his or her crewmates to perform flawlessly with each and every pull of the oar. The movements of each rower are so intimately intertwined, so precisely synchronized with the movements of all the others, that any one rower's mistake or subpar performance can throw off the tempo of the boat and ultimately the success of the whole crew. Joe dragged down the team by rowing his own way instead of the efficient way. So Joe, at the start of the book, isn't really like a member of the team. He feels out of place because they're all much more.
He's not a member of anything.
So and it's like also he doesn't row with the team at the start of the book. He rows his own way. He's a very strong rower, but he hurts the team because, like the quote said, he doesn't row the proper way. He doesn't row with them. As the book goes on, he learns. He starts rowing with the team.
He becomes more of a team player.
He becomes more of a team player, and then he also. It's the metaphor is he becomes part of the team, as in like he's more camaraderie with his with his crewmates, like he rows better with them as well.
But there was also like ups and downs of that because like when he joined the team, he started to get a strong connection with his crewmates, but then at one point he felt isolated again. Like I remember in part of the book when they were traveling for a competition, they were on the train and Joe was playing his music for the other members of the team, and they just made fun of him for it. And then he felt again like he didn't belong. And that kind of destroyed his self-confidence and his teamwork because he went into the situation of of, yeah, the team is supporting me and I'm getting new friends now, but no, they're just like everyone else in my life and they don't really care about me. They're just here to make fun of me.
Yeah, and I think as he moves into that, it kind of becomes like his emotions are the rest of the team's emotions almost, and you know, vice versa. And even there's this one point that I'm looking at here on page 158, where basically like this whole metaphor can be summed up in the idea, you know, Ulbrichtsen was trying to shift around like how the tactics were being done, and you know, and when you do that, you kind of lose some of the chemistry that's really organic. And you know, it says right here that, you know, there were too many days when they rowed not as crews but as boatfuls of individuals. The more he scolded them for personal technical issues, even if he preached teamsmanship, the more the boys seemed to sink into their own separate and sometimes defiant little worlds. You know, there were so many things and impediments to them being so unified together, and I think not only is one of them the pressure from Ulbrichtsen and then, you know, other things, but I think another really interesting impediment and something that goes, you know, in tandem with their emotions throughout the book is the weather, and a lot of that, and I want to know what you guys think about that.
Well, I'll give some commentary on that. I feel like there's a lot of points throughout the book where you look at the rowing team, and the one that we're focusing on, the varsity, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you'll like see multiple quotes throughout the book of Ulbrichtsen saying, you know, they're not rowing together, they're not rowing right, it's not coming together. One day they're amazing, the next day they're the worst I've ever seen, and it's like this, and then you see in that part of the book, there's like, it's weird because at that point when they're doing like bad and they have ups and downs, there's like winter storms and like, you know, like ice on the water and stuff.
Yeah.
And it basically, I guess it kind of coincides with like the idea that the team is not coming together and they're not like, you know, it's just not happening. It's not like they're rowing together, and I guess like that could kind of correspond with the fact that they're not getting enough practice on the water too.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, they're not rowing together and the water's not allowing them to row together. I guess that's something you could put together.
Yeah. So one thing I want to say is like the team faced a lot of hardships, so like internally, as we just discussed, but they also faced like the external hardships. Like rowing is a sport that basically takes every muscle in your body, and then when
every muscle of everybody's body.
of everybody's body, and then you put them all in the one boat and they're supposed to be in sync. And even if you practice it every day, you can't be ready for the real competition. Mm-hmm. So when they go to the Olympics and then they're going up this German team who won almost all their races up to the final match, mm-hmm. and then the Americans are put in the worst lane 6, and they're faced with the hardest winds. There you saw the external challenges that like their confidence already wasn't that good. One of their teammates was already sick, and now they're put in the worst lane, and now all they can think about is, this is going to be a much harder race than we thought. We're in the worst lane. One of our teammates is sick, and we're versing one of the top teams in the world.
It's almost like the wind resistance is the perfect metaphor for all of that other stuff going on.
But then you later see though that they I guess they come together as a team, and they make up the missed mileage from what held them back, as like you said, how the wind holding them back can coincide with like their anxieties and whatnot.
Yeah,
right.
The pushing forward and, you know, pushing through that can coincide with them overcoming like the obstacles.
The weather was basically throughout the entire book just representing how everyone on the team felt. When they went against Cal as freshmen, it was a sunny day, the crew was feeling good about how well they were rowing, and they won against Cal. But after that, they fell into a slump, and then while they were practicing, the weather was terrible in Washington, and then later on in the sophomore year and stuff, when Joe's feeling down about family stuff, it's snowing, it's raining while they're rowing and practicing. So just the author always used the weather to show how all the rowers, but mainly Joe, were feeling throughout the book.
Mm. Yeah. I think all of that makes a lot of sense, and it really kind of makes you feel like, you know, the weather truly does. It really does go in tandem in a really interesting literary way with how everything else is going on, you know? It kind of doubles down at some of the worst moments at some points, and I think that was kind of the interesting part about, you know, this whole idea. But overall, I think throughout the book they kind of come into their own, especially characters like Joe, of course. But I think if there's any quote that really sums up basically the entire point of the book, I think it was on 312 when there's a substitute oarsman who's put in, and it just says when he's doing his steps, even though they're kind of different, but it's the technique isn't the same. And the quote is, "The boat just didn't feel right." And I think that's like the perfect way. If there's something that sums up the entire book, like it's that they all grew together as one.
Yeah, and another thing on that, like when they put in the alternate, I know. When they put it, something that happened, when they put in the alternate and their friend was sick on the team, they didn't want to row without him. Like that sense of community was built over time, and that had to develop. So once they got to the Olympics, and they spent a few years together, they wanted to finish it right, and they wanted to be together in that. And so that's why, like, their friend was sick, and once they put in the alternate, they didn't even want to go without. Like, they made sure that their friend automatically was in the race and that he was competing, because they wouldn't win without that sense of unity and teamship. Yep, and once again, this has been Andreas Kapsalis,
Louis Savoia,
In Romano,
Liam Bourke, and this is the Boys in the Dinghy. Thank you for listening to our podcast.
Thank you.